give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What's going on, NBA draft fans? Your boys are back. The Wolves of Ball Street, your favorite draft analyst is your boys from the NBA Draft Show on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed. My name is Corey Telba. I am here, as always, joined by my co-host, Albert Garbage Time Gim. Albert, how we feeling today?
Fantastic. Always good. Always excited. That's a lie. Saying I'm always good. That's straight up lie. I apologize to the audience. It feels great to be here. I'm feeling very nostalgic today with our guest today. This just feels really strange because it's been so long, but this is how everything started for us, Corey. So this is a lot of fun.
That's true. Our very first guest on when this show is titled The Draft Deck on its own podcast feed was Tyler Metcalf to help us break down Evan Mobley early in the draft cycle of that year. So Tyler Metcalf of NoCeilingsNBA.com, welcome back to the show.
Long-time listener, third-time caller. Just honored to be on with you guys then, even more so now. I feel like we only get about one of these every draft. So this is fun, even though we talk daily. But I'm excited for this one. Good to be with you guys.
It's strange because we are always doing some kind of video session and whatnot for No Ceilings, whether it's behind the scenes, public, not public, or whatever. But like, I went on the Draft Sicko show on Monday, and that was the first time I had ever recorded with Maxwell. So it's we still have a lot of wires to cross between the No Ceilings talent. So hopefully we can be doing that more throughout this draft cycle. That way, everybody on the team gets to rock a little bit. But today, you're all here because it is February, which means we are heading into March Madness. And that means that, NBA player draft stock or NBA draft prospect draft stock is starting to kind of get into a groove of what it may or may not look like more for the rest of the cycle. We're starting to get, maybe some new names than we didn't necessarily have in the last iteration. But nonetheless, we are, getting some exciting prospects to talk about. Fresh blood. Guys are jumping in, guys are jumping out. We have new number ones, new prospects to talk about with injuries and boredom, I guess, from a lot of people. But we're really excited to do these shows because we get to riff on, a whole bunch of prospects instead of just focusing on one or two singular prospects. So it's February. And let's get right into our first kind of batch of prospects. Alex Sarr still holding down the number one spot based on his rankings. He is starting to, I want to say, separate himself a little bit from the first from everybody else, just seemingly from consensus. There's some people who are have their favorites in this group, but Sarr has been in this position, and it seems like he's going to be at least in that top two, potentially top three. Zachary Richecher has locked down number two. He has, risen to number one on some outlets. Nikola Topic, who has been injured, is number three. Cody Williams has come in at number four. He's made a nice little leap. And then Jacoby Walter still holding on to a top five spot. So Metcalf as our guest. What stands out about this first group in particular in the top five?
And I think it's with Alex Sarr, Sarr to start at the very top, but I think it's kind of interesting just looking at the average cost of amongst the community, it trending closer to a surefire one, whereas when we did our last No Ceilings consensus board, he was moving the opposite direction and he was still number one on our board, but the average ranking was quite a bit lower than the previous month. So it feels like he's kind of a polarizing prospect at the top of the draft, despite being basically at the top of the draft all season. So how he's viewed, I think is really, really interesting amongst kind of the different parties. And like so many of these guys, I really think that number one spot is going to be incredibly fit dependent.
So Albert, I know you have kind of held strong and you've been a big Sar fan throughout this cycle. Is he somebody who you still have at the top of your board?
Corey, that's why you're the best host in the business, because you know how to ask all the best questions. And it's funny. I just had a conversation with Evan from our No Ceilings team, and I actually dropped Sar to number 4 on my board. While he's been 1 on my board for a very, very long time. I started thinking something, and I brought it up to Evan, and we were talking about it a little bit. And I realized this is just for me, my own personal view on the situation. I think I had Sar so high on my board because I was coloring this board with just, the remnants of the last couple of years. I think the image of Chet, the image of Victor, Evan Mobley, all these guys, they were like just really, deeply ingrained in my brain. And maybe if I were smarter, I could get them out of my brain and start anew. But I don't know, I kept thinking about those guys, and it kind of colored my view of Alex Sar, where I feel like I may have been slightly overrating his game just a little bit. Those guys were incredible. And not to say that Alex Sar isn't great. I mean, he is very worthy of being in this conversation. And it's not like I dropped him to like 15th on my board. He's still at 4 in the top 5, right? And that could always change. But I think the biggest thing, the reason why I wanted to drop him on my board a little bit is because, number one, I realized I might have been, overreacting a little bit. And then I had another overreaction because I saw Cody Williams play in person, and I stood, next to him on the floor during warmups and stuff. And I was like, oh, he might be my number 1 guy. So I moved Cody Williams to 1 on my current board right now, this very second. But you know what? I'm weak. And, in 20 minutes after talking to you guys, Cody Williams might be off my board. I don't know. This is who I am. So accept me as I am.
Well, Cody Williams has been the big riser over the last month or so. I think with Cody, obviously the rim pressure and like the size and the frame and that combination, he has been really efficient this year, kind of everywhere on the floor. And, obviously he's such a different prospect than his brother Jalen. But, the one thing you can say is that, they do share some genetics, and Jalen really grew into his body in this like kind of insane way where he's just so strong and physical to kind of be in combination with all of the smooth skills that he has, right? And you're kind of projecting that kind of physical transformation a little bit. You made note of it, that Cody's body looked so good in comparison to what it looked like when we all saw him at the Nike Hoop Summit last April, right? Like he's already made strides, and this is somebody who's a freshman compared to when Jalen came out after a few years in college. So he's taller. He has those big, strong shoulders. He gets to the rim. He's got that elite spin to get to the rim. He's got these weird flick shots. The jumper, for as weird as it could look at times, is going in. And I don't think any of us are probably going to project him as one of the better shooters in the draft, even with the percentages. But like that whole package, I think is just really, really intriguing. Metcalf, what has really impressed you about Cody? I think, we've all been really excited by the strides he's made. What is it specifically that has you high on Cody?
Just that he gets better by the game. And we talked about it at Hoop Summit Drink, but he just looked uncomfortable. He didn't look confident. He looked like a fish out of water there. And he kind of looked overwhelmed by the setting. And at the very, very, very start of the season, we saw some of those signs. So I was like, all right, maybe he's just going to be a big time sophomore breakout. But by the week, he's kind of found his groove, gotten more confident, and just the success and the production has followed rapidly. I buy the shot in some sense where I don't think he's going to be a lethal shooter, but I think he'll be good enough. And you mentioned kind of the different ways that he can get to the rim, just that flexibility of, the bend that he can get on turning the corner, hit guys with spin moves, just the versatility and transition in the half court, and just all of those ways getting to the rim really consistently is really encouraging for someone with his size and his frame that I think is going to continue to add really meaningful strength.
Albert, do you think Cody is a project prospect?
Absolutely. I think just to piggyback off of everything that Metcalf just said, I think Metcalf's description of Cody's game kind of speaks to that, right? He's developing game by game, and his development is not over. This is, in my opinion, just the beginning. But the reason why I was so enamored by his game when I saw him live was just all the concerns that we had at Hoop Summit. It felt like almost like he heard us, and he's been working on all those things. He's so much stronger. He's way more confident. And this is something that I noted in my piece too, that came out this morning. Just seeing him interacting with his teammates was interesting for me in warmups, in the pregame stuff. He was joking around with all of them. You could tell that like he's got a great relationship with some of the upperclassmen. He was kind of bumping bodies with Tristan Da Silva constantly, kind of in his ear, wanting to, talk to him and stuff, fooling around with coaches, but not being like, like a clown, but just having a good relationship with those guys, which was really encouraging to see. And I think for me, just seeing him grow throughout the season, playing off of KJ Simpson, Tristan Da Silva, the synergy that he has with Eddie Lampkin Jr. was really interesting to see as well. Not only just on film, but in person as well. Playing off of him, that guy Eddie Lampkin's really fun, actually. In person, he's this gigantic human being, but he moves really well and passes the ball really well. But anyway, with Cody, just seeing him attack the rim. Also, the game that I went to, he just decided to never miss, which also helps, right? So I think he was like, I think he was 8 for 8 from the field and just played within himself the whole time. Never felt like he was trying to do too much. A guy like he knew his role and was like, I'm not going to do anything crazy to ruin things here. I'm just going to play my role. And whenever he got the opportunity, he answered the call. So was really, really impressed. But Corey, to your question, definitely think he's a developmental guy. I think, Corey, something that you and I text about, I sent you like a slow motion video of his shot, and you had mentioned to me that he's got to widen that base a little bit. And that's something you can see, right? Whether it's on film or in person, he's already kind of narrow as a human being because he's skinny, but then the shot looks extra narrow, just like a stick insect shooting a ball or a praying mantis type of situation. Yeah. But if he widens that base a little bit, I think it'll be better. But the reason why I'm optimistic about the shooting is he's got great touch. You see it in practice, like all the mid-range, outside, floaters, everything. The touch on him is fantastic. So I'm really excited about his continual growth in that aspect.
All right. There's one more prospect in this top 5 before we move on that I want to touch on. And look, I don't want to overreact, but Metcalf, where are we at with Jacoby Walters' spot in the green room here? Are we getting nervous? Has he had too much to drink and security might need to, carry him out soon? Or do we think he's got a puke and rally in him? Where are we at with Jacoby?
Yeah, and he kind of left his VIP table in the back to go get a drink at the bar and struggled to find a spot at the bar and kind of had to finagle his way. And he somehow found himself down at the very end, closer to the door. And it's getting a little worrisome on if he's going to be able to find his way back through the crowd to his section. It hasn't been good recently. But I don't know. I'm still trying to stay optimistic with him. There's still a lot that I am intrigued about with his game. I think he gets put in a really bad spot a lot of times where it's like, oh crap, we didn't get any good looks here. Let's just throw it to Jacoby with 2 seconds left and see what he can do. He's not a great, the on-ball creation has been a little lackluster and a little disappointing all season for me. But I still think he's one of the better kind of guard shooters in this class. And as like more of a traditional 2 guard, I think he still has a ton of upside.
Yeah. And, our very own Tyler Rucker posted a fun little Guess Who graphic on social media the other day of his percentages versus Keontae George's percentages about the same way through their college seasons. And, they were eerily similar. Now, I think Keontae is a better prospect than Jacoby is. But I think he's a kind of guy that we don't need to worry too much because free throw percentage has stayed high. He takes a lot of tough shots. the self creation, just because of that handle being what it is going to be inconsistent, but he'll show some flashes. But the frame and his size and the pedigree, like at the very least, you feel safe that he's going to be an NBA player. In my opinion, even if maybe some of the passing stuff doesn't ever come to fruition, but I do think he probably is gonna have to pick it up a little bit if he wants to keep his position on the stock charts at this price. If you and Rucker, whoever has the Jacoby stock in the stock market game, might be time to move off of it, or is this just a keep and hope that it improves?
And I think whoever bought in, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think whoever bought in got him a little lower than this. So this may be not selling at the peak, but I think we may be able to still turn a slight profit here.
Okay. Thank God somebody is going to be able to keep make a profit on that. All right, let's look at the next group. We have Rob Dillingham, who's made a huge jump. His previous cost was 11. He's now at 6.7, holding down the 6th spot. Modest Buzelis is coming in at 7, even though he is coming in hot with some of his recent rankings. Ron Holland at 8, who has just been shut down. And if you had subscribed to No Ceilings Plus and were in our Discord, you would have gotten that news first. Reed Shepard is at 9, and then Stefan Castle is at 10. So Albert, who stands out to you in that next tier of guys?
I mean, as you mentioned, Corey, the leap for Dillingham has been incredible. That's something definitely worth noting here. Holland continues. I mean, now with him being shut down, I'm really curious. I think he's going to try to ramp up for like the pre-draft stuff, though, right?
Yes, that's
the situation. So yeah, power to him. Hopefully that works out. I did want to ask you guys about Buzelis, because obviously he's played better as of late, and he's kind of the hot topic for a lot of draft scouts, analysts, whatever, media scouts, whatever. And he seems like he's kind of not rising, but re-rising. He had a little bit of a dip, and then he's coming back up again. So wanted to get your thoughts on him, just because I'm still not the biggest Buzelis fan. However, I don't hate him, just because it kind of goes back to Corey when we did our pod on him. Something that I remember you saying that night that's really important is worst case scenario, he's really tall and he's going to shoot the ball well. And so that's kind of where my brain continues to go, because there are certain things that I watch. I'm like, I don't love that. And then I'll watch him like, oh, he's still really tall, can shoot it well. Oh, wait, that was a nice drive. Wow. Oh, he kind of got physical there. Nice defense. So there are like little spurts here and there, but I can't find myself being like the biggest fan of his game yet. So did want to ask you guys and how you felt. Maybe we can go Metcalf first, how you've been feeling about Buzelis as of late.
Encouraged. I'm coming into, I think I was the lowest on him of the No Ceilings crew coming into the season, where he was just outside my lottery. I thought a lot of the shooting stuff got really overblown in high school, where the bulk of it was standstill stuff, or him just kind of catching at the elbow and shooting over a 6-foot tall defender. I never have really seen the self-creation stuff. As I say that, he's busting out a little hezzy and gets the scoop finish. So great timing there. But I don't really see him being able to consistently create against NBA guys. Where I've been really encouraged is actually on the defensive end. It's still not great, but I think his fundamentals and his footwork and his willingness to kind of get down in a defensive stance has been really good. I think his help side shot blocking has been really good. It's just, I think he's really limited athletically. I don't think he has great foot speed. The explosiveness is good when it's not in traffic, but you throw a couple guys in the lane, and I think he kind of becomes purely a below the rim finisher, except for the occasional, punishing guys for late rotations. He's in my top 10. I'm intrigued, kind of like you guys have said. Worst case scenario, he's 6'9", 6'10", and can be a really, really high level spot up shooter. So I think at minimum, top 10 is kind of the baseline for him.
Yeah, I never really panicked with the shot when he wasn't hitting them early in the year, because the shot looks good.
Yeah.
And these guys are adjusting to that further 3-point line. I think if certainly some adjustments to the G League experience. I think that's probably one of the tougher ones, just having to shoot from that further line. I think there are probably benefits because of how loose and sloppy it is. It's probably a little easier to put up volume numbers without a leash, but I was never too low on that when he was missing shots, but I'm also not like super high and thinking that he's going to be like, one of the better shooters in the league either. I think he's just like, he's a good shooter. I shout out to everybody watching in the chat, and Nick's The Streets Are Buzzing says, all aboard the Furphy train. Now, we'll touch on him later, but I think it makes a pretty interesting argument on a guy who probably does a lot of similar things in the role at the next level. So like, I know that Modest is, having a little bit of a resurgence, but like, he's not the only tall, foreign, kind of foreign. I mean, I think he was born in America, but Lithuania stand up shooter who, is kind of like an ancillary guy with a little bit of bounce. But I think his rise is interesting because it's like, all right, he's hitting a few more threes, but ultimately, I mean, the playmaking feel is still kind of the same as it was in high school, where like he's capable of making some pretty reads, but like the decision making and processing still is just okay at best, right? And the physicality is something I think he's probably always going to deal with. While he has a good frame, like I just saw Cooper Flagg the other day in person, and like my dude's frame is something you're never going to have to question. He's got these big, strong, just Tatum shoulders, and like, he's younger than Buzelis is, and it's going to take a lot of work and time. So, but it's this in this draft. I don't know. Maybe you want a poor man's Franz type of guy, and who's going to be able to be switchable. And I think that's why his stock is kind of trending up, as everybody else is kind of just having a blah season. And even somebody like Dillingham, who's hit the 6th spot, right? Like this is somebody who you still have to question if he's even going to be capable of being not like an even defender, like how much he's going to take off the table on that end in the long term. So at the very least, you can be like, well, maybe Modest is switchable and big, and you're not going to be able to like target him in the playoffs by the time he actually is on a team and getting minutes that's capable of getting there.
If I can really quickly, Corey, with Modest, I just wanted to go back to the point that Metcalf made about him on defense. Sometimes watching him get into a stance, it almost feels like they're like really coaching that into him. So he's like really pushing himself to get into a stance. But sometimes like it looks so forced that it actually makes him like less mobile laterally because he's like really struggling to get into that stance. And also, Corey, the last point that you made about Dillingham, like watching when they played against Gonzaga, like he just wasn't in the game at the end. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, there it is, right? There are still some concerns with him. So, yeah.
Is there anybody from this group, reading it off again, Dillingham at 6, Buzelis at 7, Holland at 8, Shepard at 9, Castle at 10, and it seems like Buzelis is trending that way. Is there anybody else that you think can enter that first group, that top 5 group?
It'd be Castle for me.
Yeah.
He's in my top 3 right now. He's been so impressive lately, and his defense has been so much better this year than I ever expected it would. He's looked absolutely incredible this last month or so. So he would definitely be the one for me.
Just really quickly on Castle, I'm with you, Metcalf. He's been playing really well. It's just once every 5 3-pointers he takes, it just hits the bottom of the backboard. I'm just like, damn, I wish you just didn't do that and you would be locked in the top 5.
And it takes a while for him to get to 5 3-point attempts because he's frequently passing up wide open ones. So, I don't love that, but everything else I'm a huge fan of.
That's the guy for me too. I mean, no ceilings. We've always been a little bit higher than consensus on Castle. Part of it is, build and frame and archetype. Part of it is that we really liked his high school film and, thought he was a dog and, taking it to Ron Holland in that matchup. There's this feeling of that he's more of like an off-ball ancillary guy. And it seems like most people are kind of giving up on the point guard aspect of it. I'm kind of struggling giving that up because he's playing on a veteran defending national championship team where he missed some time and he's playing next to a bunch of guys who are used to playing with the ball in his hands, and he is fitting in and kind of doing what he can to star in his role. Am I crazy to still believe in his like primary on-ball equity at the next level?
No,
I definitely still buy it.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of this is situation, and if you put him on basically any other college team, he's probably running the point. But Tristan Newton returned, starting point guard from national champion. Cam Spencer takes a lot of kind of creation there. They're an old team and they expect to repeat. So they're not just going to give a freshman the reins and be like, hey, run the show for us as we look to repeat. I still think, and every now and then he'll bust out some of these incredible passes and these running the pick and roll. Well, he'll, hit the defenders with a hesitation at the elbow and then keep, Nash dribble through the paint and then hit a live dribble, like one-handed kick out to a wide open Alex Caravan who will drain it for three. He does have a really, really high level understanding of kind of playing with pace and just overall floor spacing. So I definitely think, is it going to be a pure point guard? Probably not, but I do think there's a lot of kind of initiation in his future.
And to your point, Metcalf, I feel like you're right. If he was in a different circumstance, he probably would be running the team and running the offense. But this is how I'm thinking about it. I'm wondering if this kind of turned out great for him, right? Because maybe this opportunity, right, playing with this UConn team, as you mentioned, Cam Spencer does dribble the ball a lot, so does Tristan Newton. Maybe this is like his opportunity to show like NBA teams I can do both, right? And maybe on the next level, he ends up in a situation where they see, what we've seen, the high school stuff, and we go, we want to invest in you as like a more of an on-ball guy, but also now you've had a season in college where you kind of didn't have to do that all the time and you were still effective. You were having an impact on the game, and now we know you can do both. So it could be a good thing for him in the long run.
Yeah, if anything, I think he's kind of, done a really good job playing a role that he's probably, not 100% used to playing and fitting in and looking good while doing it. And, when we say like, is there point guard equity? Like there are so few like Mike Conley's, entering the league now that like, being able to kind of have that shared responsibility and being able to fit in and play utility guard / wing is, if anything, that versatility to me seems really beneficial to be able to do. And I think, as the process goes on, especially when we see those sweet pre-workout videos of Stephen Castle just splashing 3 after 3 in the coming months.
8 in a row. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's gonna be like crack. I think he's just the guy that it's like he's probably gonna have a deep tournament run. He's probably gonna interview like amazing, like the physical ability. To me, he's like the easy answer for a guy who's gonna creep up into that top 5. Let's take a look at the next group of guys here. Kyle Filipowski at 11, Isaiah Collier at 12, Kevin McCullough at 13, Dalton Connect at 14, Tijan Salon at 15. Are we ready to have the Isaiah Collier conversation here? Because my guy's looked a little bit better since he come back.
Yeah, he has. His numbers have looked much better. It's kind of hard for them to get worse, for what it's worth.
Right.
But I kind of feel like if we're going to have the Collier conversation, Albert and I may just need to go on mute and let you kind of vent for 10 minutes or so.
Well, to be fair, I've been a big vocal detractor of Isaiah Collier, not of the talent, because he's somebody that I think I quite liked coming in. As far as the talent goes. And I thought he was one of like the more impressive physical guy, like specimen guys at Hoop Summit when we saw him in person, even though there's no godly way that he's anything resembling 6'5" in height. But look, he's somebody who just like wasn't playing winning basketball for all of the, impressive passing flashes, like the athleticism. He had 1 dunk before he went out and got injured, which was less than Reed Shepherd, so for somebody who is billed as this big physical downhill explosive dude, like very much below the rim. Now, granted, he's always been a good finisher. But like he has looked way better at processing, making decisions. He just had a 9 assist, 1 turnover game. I think he was 6-2 before the game before that. The shot to me is what it is and what it's going to be. Like even if he goes on like some kind of heater, like I'm not like a buyer that he's going to have an NBA ready shot. But I think that if he can continue to just slow down and make good decisions while, doing his rim pressure thing, this is a kid who, I think you're looking at like top 10 as his floor as teams search for like some kind of primary, ball handler in this class. And, to be fair, like I think there's a chance given the physical tools and, his frame that, maybe there is some like, if he were to drop, he could be like a Tyrese Maxey type guy. But he's got to keep it up and be consistent and show that he's, not just a good numbers, bad team guy.
Heavy emphasis on bad team. This USC team's been a freaking nightmare to watch. I feel terrible for everyone involved. So Corey, for me, I'm gonna refrain from making like any definitive statements on Collier because I'm supposed to see him live soon at UCLA. So I'll wait till after that one, or maybe I'll do another one of these, notebook pieces like I did today. But no, you're right, Corey. To his credit, he has been better since he came back from injury. That 9 assist, 1 turnover game, good for him, right? If he can slow things down, great. That would be great because sometimes before he got hurt, dude, some of those turnovers were like, what the hell, dude? Like I tried imagining being his teammate and being like, do you want to fist fight after this? Or, one of those situations. But no, to his credit, Corey, he has played better. He has looked really impressive at times. So we'll see. I once again, I want to reserve final judgment until I see him in person.
Shout out to the chat, by the way. Yes, Alex Swish, we do read the chat, and we're not hating, we're evaluating, trying to be fair. And he's been playing better, which is what we said. So Gregory Castillo says, watching USC in Colorado made me want to scratch my eyes out.
Same.
So,
Greg.
this is something that is not, just us. It's something that but I think he's done a better job. He's starting to look like the prospect he was billed as.
Yeah.
Where before he was, producing at a level where, given all his physical tools, where it wasn't conducive to winning on any kind of basketball floor. And when you're investing top 10 capital, even in a bad draft, you don't want to just be like, well, it's a bad draft. Let me just throw a dart at the wall, even, if it's regardless. Collier's look better. Thoughts on AJ Mitchell? We'll touch on AJ as we get to him. There are some fans at No Ceilings for sure. So we also have Filipowski, McCullough, Connect, and Salon in this group, which is a couple of older dudes and then maybe the most raw potential lotto pick in this draft. So Metcalf, which one of these guys do you kind of want to touch on here before we move on to the next group of guys?
I need you guys to convince me on Filipowski because the more I watch, the more out I get.
Interesting.
Let's start with the positives. His passing this year has been absurd. I think he's been one of the best passers in probably this draft, let alone among the big men. His ability to kind of pass and create out of the short roll, really impressive. Those skip passes out of the post, really impressive, really accurate with them too, which I think is something that kind of gets understated, where we see the vision and that's awesome, but then he's pretty consistently putting it in the shooting pocket. Love all of that. Love the rebounding, the foul drawing, the physicality and the motor that he has. How does he score in the NBA? Because he's still not shooting it. The mechanics look fine from, my amateur eye. I don't think there's really anything to worry about, but this is 2 years in a row where he hasn't really shot it. And 90% of his interior shots are him just going through the chest of the defender. He doesn't really create anything easy the bulk of the time in the post. Occasionally he'll have some awesome, up and under spin move down there, but a lot of it is him just trying to out muscle guys in the post, and that leads to a handful of fouls. But how translatable is that to the league? How is that going to go when he's trying to do that against Valanciunas or Podol, let alone Gobert or Embiid? So I'm just not sure how he consistently scores in the NBA to warrant a near top 10 selection.
Well, I think that he's going to be able to play 4, because I think the thing that has stood out to me for him this year, outside of like some of the improvements, with the shot, which to me looks similar, but they're going in more, which is a good sign, is I just think his ability to move his feet on defense has, been really impressive, and chalk that up to being a second-year player instead of a first-year player, or chalk it up to the hip surgery. But whatever it is, like, I think he's actually able to get kind of low in his stance now, where he was somebody who, if you put a guard on him last year, because he was so narrow, it felt like, he was able to make up for it some with, his size and his length. But now it really feels like if he's on an island, he's able to survive that. So yeah, he's not going through the chest of Joel Embiid or Gobert, but could he go through the chest of Jeremy Grant? Like, I think he could probably do that. Can he run a pick and roll and, all of a sudden it's a guard big switch and now he's got to take advantage of a matchup with, a smaller wing? I think he can do that. The post stuff, I mean, how much post stuff is he going to be tasked to do with at the next level, right? Like that, to me, it's almost inconsequential outside of like him cutting to the hoop and using like post moves on like dump ins and whatnot. But I think his ability to just be connective and be physical, he's competitive, rebounds the ball. Like, I think that Filipowski is the kind of guy that, would slide in really nicely next to, certain team contexts. Like, I think he would be great in Oklahoma City.
Agreed.
Playing next to Chet. I think he would look pretty good next to Victor. And, I think that his ability to kind of move his feet and attack a closeout is pretty underrated too. And then you add in some of the passing stuff. Is he going to be Lauri Markkanen? No. But can he be like diet Lauri Markkanen for stretches as either like a complimentary piece or a bench guy? I think possibly. And I think he knows how to play. So to me, that's a way better ability than some of the other guys that are going in that range. So he's just a good basketball player who does a lot of things, probably with a limited, cap on his ceiling, just given like certain athletic limitations.
Go ahead, Metcalf.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and kind of viewing him through the prism of more of a 4 would probably be a little more encouraging for how I'd view him. So, try and think about him playing with Lively last year, but now with, the improved passing, handle, movement ability, and all that kind of stuff. I definitely agree with the defense. He's moving way better. I don't love the drop pick and roll coverage, but again, if we're talking about him as a 4, when is he ever really going to have to do that then? So.
Oh, did we lose Metcalf?
I think he froze.
Well, Corey, I just wanted to say, just going off of what you said, I 100% see him as a 4 on the next level, just because I feel like a lot of the rim protection stuff with him is going to be interesting. But I think the way that I thought about it, Corey, for me, I didn't even think of like a Lauri Markkanen. I actually thought of like, what if he's kind of like, not that they're like 1-for-1 comp or, even like similar in how they play, but what if he's kind of like a Naz Reid type of situation, right? Like a backup 4, comes off the bench, gives you, I mean, we've seen he plays with a lot of toughness, plays with a lot of energy. Maybe he comes in and offers a lot of that off the bench and becomes like a really underrated, nice bench piece, right? And I know Metcalf was like, well, why do you take a type of guy like that in the top 10? Well, honestly, Corey, someone in this draft that goes like 11 and 12 might go like 31st in their draft. And that just kind of is the situation that we're in with this class. So with a guy like Filipowski, if he could potentially be like a really rock solid backup 4, like a Naz Reid type of guy, then I'd be totally fine taking using a top 10 pick on a guy like Filipowski in this class, at least.
Yeah. And to be perfectly honest, if Filipowski came out last year, I still think there's a pretty good chance he goes in the top 25.
Yeah.
So, something to consider with that. Moving on here beyond those guys, our next group of guys, we have He's Missy from Baylor, Tyler Smith from the G League Ignite, Donovan Clingan, Ryan Dunn, and Bobby Klintman. Is there anybody in particular there that you're itching to talk about here?
Tyler Smith.
Okay.
I moved him up my board a ton. My thing with Tyler Smith, the more I watch him, it's like I love how he moves. And Corey, I know you're a big movement guy, right? Like you love guys that I think I was listening to your pod on Sunday, the Draft Sickos one, with Maxwell, and you were talking about Keyshawn George and how he moves on the floor and how like his movement patterns are so interesting. For me, I watched Tyler Smith and I'm like, I have to remind myself that this guy's like almost 7 foot. I love the way that he moves for a guy his size. I love the jumper on him. I think his outlook in the NBA is not that complicated. He's going to be a pick and pop 4, not super duper athletic, but is going to give you, he's going to bring some intensity on the defensive side of the ball. Moves really well. A guy that, you're going to trust to hit outside shots. I feel like his outlook is pretty simple. And that simple outlook is plenty valuable in the NBA. Like grabbing a guy who's that tall, that moves that well, and can shoot it that well. Also, Corey, clearly I have a type. I like guys that are 6'7" to 6'10" and can shoot the ball. And if you're one of those guys, you're probably going to end up in my top 10 for no reason. But with Tyler Smith, dude, the more I watch him, the more I go, I just can't see, like, his floor is so intriguing to me. Like I would like that guy, CJ Miles-ish type of guy, but maybe even better, and he's taller, right? So
right.
I'm super into Tyler Smith.
Yeah, Tyler Smith, I've been a big fan of for a while. I got to see him last year with the Overtime Elite a couple of times, and the first time I got to watch him in person was in this New Jersey high school all-star contest thing where the Overtime Elite teams, he was on the Cold Hearts, took on this New Jersey high school team that had some really interesting, college players that are D1 now and in the future. And he was the guy that really stood out on that Cold Hearts team because it was just like, all right, he's huge. Like in person, he just looked massive. And you just see that shot and you're like, oh, that looks different than everybody else. Because as you were saying, like that smoothness with him and that fluidity stands out as far as his athleticism too. So like his ability to use that leverage that he has and that gravity as a shooter to pull guys away from the hoop, hard close, and then attack it in a straight line. And then that's where you see the athleticism really pop. It's really fun. And just if he's just this pick and pop guy who could, attack a closeout every now and then, it's just a really interesting prospect as an ancillary guy in your lineup, right? So I think that, Tyler is a guy that is going to have a lot of fans, and he's the one prospect seemingly that has seen his stock this year kind of boom, given the context and the situation. And just because of the simplicity and his ability to play within himself in a context where a lot of people really struggle to play within themselves. Right. The game moves really fast, and it really never has moved fast for him. Now, certainly it's, moved fast for him on the defensive ends at times, but offensively, he's always looked really poised and confident in his role. And you can say because it's more simplistic than, Modest and Ron, or you could just say like, this is a guy who knows his game. Right. And there's, a feel and an IQ for, believing and understanding that. And so I definitely think that Tyler is really intriguing, and it wouldn't shock me if he went in the lotto, on draft night in the least.
And Corey, just really quickly, like the whole simplicity part of it, like there's nothing wrong with that. Like not everyone in the league can be Jason Tatum, right? You need to fill your rosters with guys that can play a role, that aren't going to go beyond what you ask them to do and, play to T. I think Corey last year or the year before, I think you wrote a piece on Kevin McCullough and you said he was going to be a star in his role or something to that effect, right? And I think those guys are crazy important. And especially in a class like this, I feel like most NBA teams are going to be looking for those types of guys, right? Knowing that this is not the year to find that 1A superstar or the next face of your franchise. a guy like Tyler Smith should, in my opinion, at least, should 100% be in the lottery conversation, just because he's showing it right now on that team with Ron and Modest and, you know, all those guys. He's just doing his role and he's doing it to great effect. So I'm right there with you.
Now, Gregory Castillo in the chat says, if I believed in his defense, I'd have him top 10. And then Ingenola says, this guy's going to be a turnstile. Shot is legit, though. So Metcalf, for a guy who actually does get, like, I think he's got pretty good stock numbers. What has been kind of your perception of Tyler Smith's defense? Because, you know, agreed, like, it hasn't been, you know, the best.
Yeah, and I wouldn't classify him as an elite defender by any means, but I think some of his like weak side rim protection stuff has been really good and kind of the shining light of his game. So I with his ability to stretch the floor, I'm much more intrigued with the idea of him as a power forward or playing that kind of forward role and being able to stretch it out to the corners, and then play as that low man and be that support system from the weak side, where whether he's, you know, tagging the roller or rotating over on drives or whatever, I think there's a lot of upside with his weak side stuff. I don't want him being on the ball or the drop defender and pick and roll, but I think his defensive concerns have almost gotten a little overblown given how good he is doing stuff like this.
So, and maybe because I just saw a highlight that had the Salt Lake City Jazz team in it. If he had gone the more traditional college route, is he having a freshman season that kind of mirrors a guy like Taylor Hendricks?
I don't think it's totally unreasonable.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think Hendricks moves a lot better defending on ball. But a lot of the offensive stuff is the same, where it's really simple. It's play finishing, it's catch and shoot, just doing the little things and then being that menace on the weak side. So I don't think that's a totally ridiculous kind of comparison.
And does the on-ball defense, which I think has definitely had some issues, especially when he just gets caught like standing straight, does it look like less of a concern at the college level, where the floor is a little bit more tight and the guards are a little less consistently good and dynamic? And maybe this is a guy who, instead of talking about him where, hey, maybe he could be in the lotto and he's 17th in these rankings, where is he actually a top 7 guy potentially? Like, is he more in that range? So I don't know if I'm personally there with him, but I think it's an interesting conversation to be had with him as a prospect, to as much as this Ignite process has maybe helped him rebound his draft stock after people kind of forgot about him with Overtime Elite. Is there even a higher level he would have reached if he was in a beneficial college system? Is kind of an interesting thing. Now, there are a couple other, I mean, this is really an interesting group here. Donovan Klingen's at 18. And, you know, this is a guy that when I remember vividly, we were saying needs to go back to school. Last year at the Hoop Summit, we were very passionate about it. I don't remember if he had announced yet if he would that he was returning, or he like announced it like the week after we had recorded that. But we were like, this is a guy who needs to prove that he can kind of, you know, do some things in bigger minutes. I don't necessarily know if he has 100% shown that he could do that, and there are some real injury concerns. But are we just bored of him? And that's why he's kind of coming in at 18 on these February rankings, when he does play, he is awesome. And really the thing is, I think that his defense isn't even the thing that's been awesome as like the best part about him this year. I think his offense has been really good. And UConn is a wagon again this year, and he is a large part of that again. To me, I've seen the things that I wanted to see out of him to like buy into this kind of like lumbering center that doesn't shoot threes as a potential lotto guy. Obviously, this class helps make that argument for him, because if you're just looking for good players, I think that he's starting to get a little underrated as people get bored of him, because he has just been productive whenever he's on the floor. It's just sometimes he's not on the floor.
Corey, I think for me, it's not even the on the floor stuff. Like, he had a 6-assist game against Georgetown.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Like, that's great, right? That's the type of stuff we were looking for with Klingon. But his injury stuff is all with the lower half of his body, and he's gigantic. Like, he's not just tall, he's huge. He's 7'2". They're listing him at 7'2", 265. That's a lot of weight. That's a lot of size. And he's already kind of like a bigger, burlier guy, right? And if his injuries are going to be all lower half, feet, all that's, the history on foot issues with bigger guys is terrible, always bad. I feel like the one anomaly so far has been like Kevin Durant, right? But it's always rough to have these guys. And so, Corey, I think if we're just looking at on-floor product, of course, I'm right there with you. To have a 7'2" guy that plays the way that he does, as you mentioned, right? He's been great this year. He's just so much to handle, especially on the college level, to be that big, and to, have his offensive package. It's tough, right? But on the next level, if he's going to have to prove to teams that he can stay healthy, and that's a really tough thing. Joel Embiid had the same issue, right? I mean, Embiid obviously way more talented, better player, but he was a huge injury risk, and the reason why he dropped a little bit in his class, right? But with Klingon, it's never been the on-floor thing for me, at least in terms of this season. It's just he's missed time with lower half issues, and that's always scary.
It's all injuries for me. And ESPN has him listed at 280. So I think he came in. I think the big story was that he added 15, 20 pounds from last season. And I'm like, dude, you're already one of the biggest humans on the face of the earth. Why are you adding more weight? And for a guy who, wasn't the most in shape in high school, and now he's having multiple foot injuries, that really, really worries me. Like Albert said, all the on-court stuff is absurd. We're even seeing some of the passing now. His assist rate's up to 14, which is better than some of the guards in this draft class. He rebounds everything. The block numbers are just dominant. The post-finishing stuff is dominant. Good foul drawer. I worry about how much he leans on guys and kind of commits fouls on defense, but whatever. I think you can fix that once you realize that you're one of the biggest humans on the face of the earth. So I just stop bulking up, stop getting bigger. You don't need to be 280. So I really worry about what those medicals are going to say.
So I saw him earlier in the year, and I know that he put on weight according to the website, or I don't know. He looks lean though. He didn't look like it was bad weight that he had put on. Like, some of it's probably just because he got a little older. Some of it was probably a concerted effort to get stronger.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a lot of it.
But it was like, when I was watching him, like, I don't know how much leaner he can really get. And if he's not carrying like the muscle, then it's just fat.
Right.
Weight, I don't know what his physical profile, and I don't know if that's a good thing that we don't know what his physical profile ultimately could look like. But I just, from a production standpoint, he's like one of the few college prospects that you can kind of be like, well, I know he's good, like, for real. So at what point of the draft does the foot injury concern kind of go away? Because we saw Cam Whitmore last year dropped to 20. I know a lot was said about, whatever, him interviewing bad and who knows, but like, really, he dropped because of the medical red flags. And I think that if that draft happened again, just based on his play earlier in the year, teams would probably ignore some of those red flags, in the moment, because they haven't really reared their ugly head. So at what point do those red flags just become worth it?
I'd say after 10 for me. He's 15. So depending on the right team, I think anyone outside, kind of in that range who needs a center, I'm not sure there are many better swings in this draft to kind of take at that position, because I would be shocked if he didn't have a solid career for any other reason than injuries. And when I say solid, I don't mean, Hall of Fame starter, just minimal, kind of 20 minutes a night role player. I think that's kind of his baseline, given how dominant he's been in both these seasons. It's just the injuries really, really concern me. So it's going to be fascinating to see what the scuttlebutt is with those medicals.
Yeah. And, as much as I want to pump them up, that those are big, legitimate concerns for a team that, especially if you only have one pick and it's like, we don't want to waste it and throw it away. All right. In the next group, we have Khalil Ware at 21. We have Jared McCain at 22. Hot riser there. Zach Eady at 23. Oso Ighodaro at 24. And then friend of the program, Dylan Jones, coming in at 25. So Metcalf, now that you are back on the screen for this next group of guys, who is the guy and the name that has stood out from this group for you?
Let's talk Jared McCain.
Okay.
My God, did he put on a show against Florida State? And he's kind of been doing stuff like that for the last couple weeks, couple months. He's been super, super impressive. And I think he's kind of continuing to show by the game that he's more than just a shooter. The ability to kind of consistently get to the rim despite not being an elite athlete has been really impressive. And then his craft and his scoring touch with both hands around the rim has been phenomenal. I really like the passing reads, the decision making. The defense is pretty inconsistent, but he's been a pretty solid rebounder with multiple games in double digits for rebounding. But the big selling point is that he might end up being the best shooter from this class.
He got a strap.
Yeah.
He's got a strap. And, I think what's so interesting about him is I think when watching a lot of his pre-draft or his pre-Duke film, we all really liked his ability as a playmaker. And that's not really a part of his game that he's gotten to show off a ton at Duke. I think primarily because it's not what he's being asked to do. But I think he has that to unlock. The shooting is absurd. Finishing and stuff for a guy his height has been good. I mean, he's like this ideal kind of complementary floor spacing guard connective piece for a team that has a primary playmaker with a little bit of size already. And, Albert, you and I went up and we spoke to him after one of the Hoop Summit scrimmages, and we both walked away and we were like, that's the most charismatic basketball player that we've ever met. Yeah. And I think that goes a long way. Obviously, he's a big TikTok guy and whatnot, so he's very comfortable in himself. But like, he is a guy that in this pre-draft process is going to just floor people in interviews. Yeah. So where is his kind of ceiling as a draft prospect? Like, what is the highest, Albert, that you could see him going?
I actually don't know, Corey. Maybe lottery, end of lottery, 14, like literally end of lottery. It could happen. And Corey, to your point, like, we walked away so impressed after meeting him. We were like, this is, like you said, charismatic, just effervescent type of personality, intense eye contact, lots of smiling, cracking jokes. We were like, this kid has it, right? Just great, personality to him. But even the on-court stuff, like, he's been incredible. The last 5 games, I think he's got like 3 games in the last 5 with over 10 rebounds. Metcalf mentioned that Florida State game. He went 8 for 11 from 3. That's pretty goddamn good. Yeah, he's a really fun player, Corey. And I think in this draft, why not? End of lottery, you get a guy who, can run the team, good character guy, can shoot the hell out of the ball, is playing winning basketball. I'd be totally fine, like, at 14, taking a guy like that in this class. Obviously, if this was a different year, I'd feel different. But no, he deserves all the praise that he's getting and how much he's moving up boards right now with his play recently, because it's been unbelievable.
Yeah. I think he is somebody who actually has a chance to rise even more in the next iteration of these draft rankings. All right, so our next group of guys from 26 to 30, we have Tristan Da Silva, Ethan Almanza, Devin Carter, Tyrese Proctor, and then DJ Wagner. That's our group from 26 to 30. Some of those names I am a little bit surprised are still there, but Albert, you just saw Tristan Da Silva up close. And he was somebody who, when you and I did a film session with Nick Clifford, Neek spoke very highly of Tristan as a player. So what were your impressions on Tristan da Silva? Because it seems like from the jump, he was the guy in the chat that you were like, this dude.
What I have to say about Tristan doesn't mean as much as Neek had to say about Tristan, but I walked away from that game going, God damn, I love Tristan da Silva. I just seeing him, he steps on the floor. This guy's 6'9", just chiseled frame, huge shoulders. He walks in, super handsome dude. Everyone's like, whoa, like there's like an aura to him almost, right? And he walks in and he kind of like just like does his own warm up. It was fantastic. And then the game starts and he's just making just perfect reads all the time on offense, just perfect timing, knows when to cut, knows where to be, knows how to move the ball. The outside jumper looked good. He had a couple cuts that game. I was just like laughing by myself and I was like, that's high level in just incredible basketball. And defensively too, I think Metcalf, you did a feature on like some of his like off ball team defense stuff. And I was just like watching him and I'm like, yeah, this guy is smart, like really, really smart, knows what he's doing. Neek mentioned, you know, he's kind of like one of these Euro guys, really, you know, smart, intellectual, whatever. And I saw it. Like it was all on display during that game. And I just left that game. Like whenever he wasn't on the floor, it felt like Colorado was very confused about what game they were playing. And then he came back on the floor and they're like, oh, we're playing basketball. Was kind of what it felt like. So I walked away thinking if I'm an NBA front office guy, like I'd have no problem taking him in the first round. I probably wouldn't take him lottery, but you get this guy at 17, 18, you'll be really happy. If you get him even later, forget about it. So I think he's a guy that will continue to go up draft boards. He's always been a pretty good shooter in college. I think like this is already like his second or third year shooting over 35, 37% ish, whatever. But really good shooter, huge frame, really smart player. I loved him.
Metcalf, I know you've been a fan. I feel like you've been hot on him lately. What is it about him throughout this process that has kind of had him grow on you so much as a player?
Just basically everything Albert said. I mean, just incredibly high feel. None of his numbers are going to floor you. And when you just kind of look at him on paper, you're like, it's fine. But then you watch him play and it's all the connective stuff on offense where he keeps the ball moving. He doesn't take bad shots. He's not turning the ball over. And then on defense where he's communicating and directing everything and making the right rotations and deterring shots and just all of those little things that lead to winning basketball. I know that sounds incredibly cliche, but when you think about just like guys who should be ready to contribute very early in their careers and be really high level complementary pieces to kind of an already established core, I don't think there are many better options in this draft than da Silva. I think he just kind of is one of those guys that plays whatever role is asked of him and elevates the game of everyone else around him because he's constantly doing all those little things on both ends of the floor.
So what do we think the NBA vision for a Tristan da Silva is? Is it like Cam Johnson type of guy? Even though maybe he's not as probably potent as a shooter, or is it something else?
I get some like Clippers Batum vibes from him. Definitely not Charlotte Batum. But that kind of, 3-4 tweener type guy. You don't want him creating on ball, spot up shooter, play finisher, good cutter, good rebounder, can defend up when needed, and can, provide enough resistance if he has to switch on guards on the perimeter.
I think that's a great comp. My brain just went to Robert Horry, but yours is better. So we're good.
Well, Robert Horry, I feel like, is a pretty good one too. I think that's a pretty
Yep.
interesting one. It's you go straight to the 90s.
That's just how my brain works.
Now, let's talk about another Duke guy quickly as we round out this top 30, because Tyrese Proctor, and we didn't include the Athletics last mock on this. This came out before that was released. But Tyrese Proctor was not in the Athletics last mock draft. Is Tyrese Proctor he's coming back for his junior year?
I don't think so. I've been really impressed with this last handful of games. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts? Are you cooling on? Are you out on him or?
Well, I've been cool.
Yeah.
on Tyrese Proctor, probably always, but I kind of thought that, while he's sprinkled in a rough game here and there, I kind of was like, all right, like he seems to be playing well. Like the shot is going in seemingly a little bit more consistently. I like what I'm seeing a little bit more. Like the assist to turnover ratio this year has been really, really good. To me, he's not one of these jumbo initiators where that's what you were kind of hoping he could get to. Part of me thinks he looks really small, and maybe like we're smaller than he's listed, and the hair just gives him a little bit of that extra height. But like the shot looks good, and like he seems like an NBA player. I don't know what he would gain by going back for his junior year. But yeah, he's a guy that I kind of expected to drop out of the lotto conversations he had early in the year, because I just got like Killian Hayes kind of vibes, but also like Killian can't shoot, and I think Proctor can, so there's like a little bit more there. But I was just a little shocked. I mean, I'm not shocked that he's been dropping, but I was a little shocked that some people are starting to put it out into the ether that he may not be a this year guy. And I guess if you're a guy at Duke and you got Duke money coming in through NIL, although I'm not exactly sure if Proctor qualifies for that because he's not from here, and I know there are rules and regulations for international prospects, but not that any college would ever do anything under the table. So
never.
But I guess when you have that kind of situation, maybe it can make some sense, especially if you're going, to a second round potentially, and you're fighting for guaranteed money. But yeah, just interesting, even though, I think he is an obvious kind of faller throughout this process. All right. In our 31 range, we have Trevon Brazile at 31, Dembona at 32, PJ Hall at 33, Trey Alexander at 34, KJ Simpson at 35, Melvin Ajinka at 36, Ulrich Chomchi at 37. Welcome to the board. Carlton Bub Carrington at 38, Justin Edwards at 39, and AJ Mitchell, who we said we were going to talk about earlier in the chat, rounding out the top 40. So let's talk about AJ Mitchell a little bit, because we went from one guy who looks like Killian Hayes to another guy who looks a little bit more like Killian Hayes, with a big lefty initiator with a shaky jumper. Metcalf, I know that your co-host Tyler Rucker is a big AJ Mitchell guy. Where are you on AJ Mitchell?
Not there yet.
Okay.
I'm really trying to keep an open mind, but every time I catch one of his games, he looks pretty rough, and the shot doesn't go in, and he's not playmaking for others. So I'm trying to keep an open mind of that. I am just been horribly unlucky with the games that I've tuned in on, and obviously I'll eventually get to the good ones and catch up on those too. But I have yet to see what makes him what for some people have as a first rounder. I can't get there yet.
Yeah, I could see him as a first rounder. I know, when Rucker wrote about him and posted, it on the internet, as you do after you write about somebody, P3 actually responded to the tweet and said that he has like really impressive athletic testing. And that means something coming from them, because they're kind of like, the standard. But, talking to, some people from an NBA team who have seen him play, I think the big concern is that, one, he's probably more like 6'3" barefoot. And two, it is the outside shot. How many of those shots he passes up, not necessarily the shot itself. Like the shot itself, I think most people aren't worried about, but it's like, is he willing to change his game, kind of take them at volume? Because if those shots don't go in, and this is where the Killian stuff kind of gets you, if those shots don't go in, where are we at with him as a player? And if he's not putting them up at volume, then he becomes way easier to guard, irregardless if he's a better athlete, than it looks like on the surface. Because he has some playmaking, he's crafty, he's got all that stuff. Killian Hayes had it too, and that didn't work. So I guess, for me, I need to sell that he doesn't have that Killian Hayes in his game, because otherwise I love what it looks like. I love how herky jerky he is. Like, I love the in-between stuff. He's got even that Killian step back, like in the mid-range. I'm just concerned about what he looks like in, the context of you're a guard who your main thing is scoring. If you're going to have on-ball equity at this level, you have to be able to knock down threes. And when the ball swings your way, when you're off the ball, you can't pass them up.
Bingo. Corey, I have nothing positive to add. AJ Mitchell's not a guy that's like super high on my board. Same questions. I think the one thing I will say, like, I didn't have as big of like a reservation in terms of him athletically. I was like, oh, pretty good first step. I like the herky jerky stuff, good hesitations, takes good angles at times. I was okay with it. But yeah, I personally think he's 6'3" as well. Like, I watch him. I think he's another liar. He's not 6'4".
To be fair, it's probably his college, and
yeah, I know,
not him.
Shots fired. Fraud.
And a college would never lie about anything like that. So,
of course not.
All right. At 41, we have Tyler Kolek. At 42, we have Deron Holmes. 43, we have Kaishan George, who, again, he was not listed before this. I think he's probably going to be a riser in the next one. 44, we have Juan Nunez. 45, we have Jalen Tyson. 46, we have Pacome Dadier. And 47, we have Zvonimir Visic. 48, Alex Caravan, who editor at our website, Nick, just wrote about on the site. 49, Kwame Evans Jr. And number 50, not listed, his first appearance, we have Kansas wing Johnny Furphy. So a lot of guys who are going to make a couple of guys who are going to make big jumps, because Furphy and George are both going to have pretty significant leaps on the next iteration of this, as people now kind of put them more into a this year guy instead of a next year guy. So Metcalf, let's do it. Let's talk some Johnny Furphy, because I think you and I are the most bought in, irregardless of, the sample size. So tell the people why Furphy is a guy who maybe they should get to know, as we think he has some real lottery potential.
NBA athlete at 6'9", who shoots the crap out of the ball, and is also an elite positional rebounder. Any other guys who get those kind of descriptors in this class are mentioned in the top 5. So why I don't get the hesitation with him. Just the way he moves off ball, the cutting, the stuff in transition, the quick release. He's always shot ready. The way he kind of baits his defender into turning their back on him when he crashes the offensive glass. It's all really translatable. It's all just NBA skills. Awesome athlete. I like the defense more than others too, but whatever.
I do too.
I can kind of get hesitations, but I think the defensive concerns with him have been largely overblown, especially with that athleticism at 6'9". He just feels incredibly safe as a legit lethal shooter with a lot of defensive upside that I think has even more to kind of game to grow into and show in the coming years.
Albert, is it because he looks like a little boy?
I actually on my board right now, I have him at 10. So I'm with you guys. Like, my thing with him is he does look like a little boy, but
he looks 12.
Hey man, he's from Australia. Those Aussies are tough. That always seems to be true with them. And I love his game, dude. Like, as Metcalf mentioned, really athletic. He can be a little hunched over at times, so he looks less athletic. But it might just be because, he's young and he's learning his body still. But he moves really well. I love the way that he moves. The outside shooting, great. And he's tough. That's the thing. Like, he's not fully, in his body yet, but he's a tough dude. He plays like an Australian guy, which might be a stereotype. But I'm really into it. I have him top 10 and no problem right now.
Yeah, I think he's pretty easily their best prospect.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's particularly close. Like,
No.
I love Kev, great dude, hard worker. I just still don't buy the shot this year, even though it got a little bit better this year. And ultimately, like, Furphy is just bigger with a better shot, more athletic, and a monster frame. And he just kind of came out of nowhere this year. And he's a guy that you got to get to know, because Kansas, another team that's expecting to make a deep run. And I think that, them giving him this jump in minutes is one of the better decisions they've made. And he just brings stuff to the team that they were missing. And when you try to look at what he could do for an NBA team, like, so much of it right away is that. And I think he's probably got a little bit, more to unlock. At least, hopefully from a connective passing standpoint, where right now his game is much more play finishing. But yeah, again, 6'9", 3-and-D guys who, are real shooters. Throw some facial hair on my guy and get him in the top 8.
He's got a picture perfect jumper too, Corey. Like, just his jumper looks so beautiful to me.
Yeah, the one thing, his follow through is a little funky. He kind of points at kind of like Amen Thompson did, like
to the side.
To the side a little bit. So let's straighten that out so we can get those free throw numbers up. But at that size, at that height, kid's got a lot of potential. The other guy in that group, I don't want to gloss over him, and Albert, you wrote about him, is Keyshawn George from Miami. There's another guy who's going to be a big time riser. Why did you decide to write about George?
Somebody texted me about him. And I was like, all right, so let's dig into the tape. And I was like, well, now I understand why you texted me about him, because this is the exact type of guy that I like. As I mentioned, I have a type, right? If you're 6'7" to 6'9" or 6'10" and you can shoot, you're my guy forever. I will die for you. And with Keyshawn, he's shooting the shit out of the ball this year. Like, he's been unbelievable for shooting from outside. I think I heard, your pod with Maxwell on Sunday, and Maxwell was like, I'm not sure about the playmaking. I'm sure about the playmaking with Keyshawn. I think in time, it's going to flash even more. He plays on that team with Miami. Dude, watching them play sometimes, I hate it. Like, I hate it so much. Like, Nigel Pack sometimes is just taking like 1,000,000 threes from the logo for no reason. It's rough watching Miami play sometimes. And with Keyshawn, I'm like, dude, put him in a different circumstance, different situation, he's going to be awesome. I love the size, love the shooting, love the playmaking. Obviously, I get it. He's a little bit older, but don't freak out. He's not 55. He's going to be really good. And I think in time, he's going to be a little bit more solid on defense. I know right now, I wrote about it. Like, I think he just trusts his hands and his length a little bit too much, but I think all that is fixable. He's got a great frame. Like, he's going to easily put on muscle. I believe that. You talk about like a guy becoming like a Tatum in terms of like physically with the shoulders and stuff. I think he could get there. I really do believe that. And as you mentioned, Corey, when you did your pod with Maxwell, he might still be growing. He might actually grow to 6'10", 6'11" after everything's said and done. So he's a guy that played point guard coming up while he was playing in France, obviously from Switzerland. But when he was playing in France, they had him playing point guard, playing a ton of guard. So he's got a lot of guard skills to him. I love him a ton.
Another guy, last guy in that grouping that, I think we should touch on, because he's another guy that I think is going to be a big riser in that group. Kind of a similar archetype as like big wing facilitator guys as Jalen Tyson from Cal. He's somebody that's starting to get a lot of buzz, real potential to be like a top 20, top 30 guy. I covered him on the Draft Sickos podcast when I hopped on with Steven earlier in the process. And one of my critiques with him was like, for as awesome as he is as like a shot creator and creating space, like, I wasn't really buying, and I still don't necessarily buy kind of like the playmaking aspect of his game. Like, I think he's somebody who's capable of making some interesting passes, but I just always thought his decision making was a little rough. He's got a 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio this year. Last year it was negative, different role for him. And it's something that he's probably getting better at. But, I think that for some of the on-ball equity, and if, you're looking at him as this big dude and maybe you're like, oh, maybe he could be like a J-Dub or something. I just think there's a level of playmaking that he doesn't have to his game. He's much more score first, but he hits the boards hard. He's big. He's creative off the bounce. He can shoot it, and I think he's gonna be able to shoot it off the catch. So he's interesting. And I think it would be perfectly reasonable if he went in that top 20 range, given that the size and skill aspect with him. So Metcalf, where have you been with Jalen Tyson?
I was really, really hesitant to kind of buy in. I have him like early second round range, top 40, just because the scoring versatility and effectiveness has been just that good for him this year. The big thing that you mentioned though was the playmaking, and I was just kind of looking at my notes from his game logs on him, and the weaknesses or concerns column or whatever you want to call it. It was a lot of playmaking, consistent passing accuracy, ball security, that kind of stuff. And if he's going to be kind of more of an on-ball guy at the next level, that's going to have to get worked out real quick. So I am a little concerned about how much of what we're seeing from him is the fact that he is just kind of the end all be all on a really bad team as an upperclassman yet again, who's kind of played in a handful of conferences at this point. So is it just that he's so much more experienced and the game is slowed down for him that much compared to everyone else around him? Or has he really made this big time jump? So I still have a lot of questions. He's been really good this year though.
Really good.
I have a question. Could he eventually in the NBA, obviously the numbers are not going to be the same, could he become like an Evan Turner type of guy?
I mean, Evan Turner, he could shoot way better than Evan could.
True.
But I understand
different
what you're
times,
saying.
you know what I mean? Yeah.
I understand what you mean by like the big kind of.
Mm-hmm.
You could play point guard in a pinch, but if he's your point guard, probably not going to win a ton of games, right? But we got a lot of Jalen Tyson fans in the chat. Gregory Castillo, Jalen Tyson is him.
Oh.
Mr. Ray, I love Jalen Tyson. Wish he was a more consistent defender. Don't we all?
Would love that.
All right, finishing up in this last group of 51 to 60, we have Wooga Poplar from Albert's Miami Hurricanes. 52, we have Kobe Johnson. 53, Aaron Bradshaw. 54, the revival of Harrison Ingram. 55, Baylor Shireman. 56, AJ Johnson. 57, Kylan Boswell. Enjoy your time on the draft act while you have it. 58, we have the ever interesting online conversation of Judah Mintz. 59, we have Adama Alpha Ball, and locking down the 60th spot, Jackson Robinson, who went from a flaming hot bag of Cheetos to a regular bag of Cheetos.
To Fritos.
So, Albert, who stands out to you as an interesting guy on this list? That even though they're in a portion of a potential draft spot that says probably not an NBA player, you still kind of buy into a little bit.
First off, I just can't. I'm thinking of like really plain chips now.
Like, what do you got?
Like Bugles.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Just like going through this list, Baylor Shireman's been putting up big numbers for Creighton. Good for him.
Yeah.
Like really stuff in the stat sheets, like points, rebounds, assists, all that stuff. Harrison Ingram, a guy that I saw at the Pac-12 tournament 2 years ago, and I was like, yo, I'm out on him forever, was how I felt when I saw him. I hated how he played. Like back at Stanford, they really did want him to like create. They put the ball in his hands a ton, but I thought he was in terrible shape. I didn't like a lot of that, and didn't think he could shoot at all. And then now he's at UNC, shooting the ball better, playing a different role. And he has playmaking to him. I do want to say like that's still in him, and I think he'll be able to show off some of that maybe in a different role. But now with Ingram, like I've come all the way around, like in a huge way, where now I kind of like him. And I think in our recent mock we had him going to the Knicks in the second round, and I was like, sign me up. I'll do it. Second round pick, Harrison Ingram, no problem. We could use a guy like him. So
Westchester's nice this time of year.
Westchester is nice this time of year. But yeah, I wanted to mention those two just because Shireman's like been really, really productive recently, and Creighton just pulled off a big win, beating UConn last night. So shouts to him for playing well.
Is the more
right.
apt description. And Shireman is a guy who I've had, people who work in the league say, is somebody who they're probably a little bit higher on than, the general consensus, just guy who's been around, right? But I think the thing with Shireman, who is really billed as like a shooter, like if you had one word to describe him, but the thing that has popped lately, his playmaking has been tremendous. And for somebody who's that big, who can shoot like that, and then also has some of the playmaking chops, he's going to get multiple cups of coffee in the league, undoubtedly. Metcalf, should we try to sell people on why AJ Johnson should be way higher on this list?
It seems like a lost cause at this point, but I'm not abandoning ship.
Kristen Peak, I think, is in with us. She's kind of holding
love that
steady.
Yeah, he's one of the rare guys in this class that I'm just more than happy to take a big home run swing on. The numbers are awful, but I dare you to try and go put up decent numbers while playing 2 minutes for 3 straight weeks, playing 12 the next night, and then not playing the next night after that. Yeah. He has been dealt a losing hand this year. From what I've been told, he is up to 6'7", 175 now, which is very fun. Still very skinny, but just the way that he constantly plays hard, does a lot of the little stuff, is attentive with his weak side defense, quick decision maker, and then you get a sprinkling of the kind of on-ball creation and what he can do in transition and the flair with the playmaking. It's like, oh my God, like there's just so much there waiting to be molded into just a hell of a player. So he's going to be a multi-year project kind of guy anyways. But if I was a team, especially if I had multiple picks in the top 40, I'd definitely be using one on him.
He's one of the most impressive high school prospects I've ever watched live. I remember texting the chat last year after I saw him. I was like, I don't even care. I take him top 5 in this draft. I was just really on the AJ Johnson high because he floored me with how effortlessly he looked like he was playing a different game than the rest of the people on the court. And this was Stephen Castle, Rob Dillingham, DJ Wagner, Kwame Evans, a bunch of other guys who I'm forgetting. And it was like, oh, this is AJ's game. So I just cannot and will not. I refuse to sell my AJ Johnson stock because I think that he's the exact kind of guy you swing on. Not only in this draft, like in any draft. And to your point with he's up to 6'7", and he's only at 175. I don't know. I kind of think his frame looks good. Maybe it's the jerseys. I don't know. I feel like he's got a little bit of weight to him. He doesn't look like a string bean necessarily.
And he's physical. Like he's not afraid of contact. He attacks the rim. He doesn't shy away from guys, challenging him at the rim. He's physical, when he's defending on ball, when he's rotating from the weak side. So yeah, he's skinny now, but you're not going to have to change his mindset. And the fact that he's already kind of added 10 pounds during the season, I think is incredibly encouraging. Add another 10 to that with that already established mentality, with that length, that athleticism, at 6'7". Oh, man, it's tough for me not to get excited about him. And I was really skeptical on him coming into the year. So it's weird that his NBL tape has been more encouraging to me, which is, I may need to go talk to someone about
I'm with you. I think the defense has been really good. Yeah. Like he's learning how to play real basketball. He had a weird, high school experience, playing for Donda, and that whole thing happened. And, so he's super talented. I would be the same amount in on him if he was still listed or being talked about as a guy who's 6'5". Because that's still pretty good height for the kind of player he could be. Before we close here, just go into the chat. Thank you for everybody watching. Make sure if you haven't yet to subscribe and share, or if you just want to hang out with us, we're doing these live pods multiple times a week, so it's good to have you here. Now, Chris in the chat and Metcalf, I'm going to throw this to you because you are our resident Timberwolves guy. And it's also an interesting question that I don't want to answer. So I'm going to put that on you. What player has Anthony Edwards potential in this draft is the real question.
Pass.
This has been a big, the chat's having a
Jackson
big
Robinson.
discussion.
No, there isn't one.
No. And I think it highlights that Anthony Edwards was a special prospect.
Yeah.
More than anything else. Because there aren't Anthony Edwards in a lot of drafts. In most drafts. There's to find that combination of smooth agility and raw power. It's just you don't get it every single year. So
I'm not even gonna warrant that with a response with a name because it would be unfair to that prospect in this class just because they don't exist.
Yeah, and that's why Ant is a potential superstar, leading one of the best teams in the NBA. So, Metcalf, thank you for joining us. This was a blast, as always. So tell the people what you're working on and where they can find you on the World Wide Web.
At TMetcalf11 on Twitter, NoCeilingsNBA.com. It's mostly free. I have a Jared McCain piece coming out Friday. Go check it out. He's very good. I like him a lot.
He is good. For all the reasons we talked about on this stream. So if you missed that part, just rewind it. Albert, tell the people about your piece that you just released and, where they can find you.
When Metcalf, you gave your Twitter username, I thought you said McLovin.
Nope.
But you said Metcalf 11. It sounded like McLovin.
McLovin? What kind of fucking name is McLovin?
Oh, Jesus. Okay. So I'm Albert, at Alberto Gim on Twitter, at GTGNBA on Instagram. I wrote a piece, a little scouting notebook thing from the couple of UCLA games I went to. I saw Colorado, got to see Oregon. We'll be in the building to see USC and Arizona as well. So we'll have more to talk about. And one more boring, like plain chips, Corey. You guys remember Munchos? Come on. Had to throw that in there.
Munchos, I don't remember actually.
Oh, I apologize.
You guys remember like the I don't know what are they called, like hip hop chips or something? And it would just be a bag of chips with like Fabulous on the
No.
or like it'd be like Joel Santana on.
Dipset. Okay, perfect. Yeah, but anyway, that's where you can find me.
And you can find me at Corey Zalaba. Again, make sure that you head to NoCeilingsNBA.com for our free content. And then if you want to hop in the Discord with us, you can subscribe to No Ceilings Plus. And you get a lot of exclusive content. You get a lot of, intel. And, the community we're building over there is a ton of fun. So thank you, everybody, for watching. And if you're listening on the podcast feed, make sure you rate, review, all that good stuff. Until next time. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. We out. Peace.
Peace.